first. Oh, you ready? George, can I? All right. Okay, in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. As you know, Great Lent started, and we just finished preparation week, so just kind of a quick overview of the way Lent works. As you all know, there's prep week, and then there's the 40 days that Jesus fasted, so that's the Lent part of the Lent. And then there's Holy Week. What about it? Sure. I'll eat our bun while you. Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. That's a good idea. Or you just do it the Egyptian way. Yalla. Dima. Okay. Am I supposed to wait? What's going on? So then, so that's the Great Lent. And if you notice, if you added up all those weeks, there's a week prep, week for Holy Week, 40 days. It doesn't add up to 55. It adds up to 54. So where's that other day? Who knows? There's an extra day in there. Question was, got prep week, Holy Week, 40 days Jesus fasted. That's 54 days. Why is the fast 55 days? It's not a math class. No. Somebody doesn't know how to count. There's got to be one in there, right? So, Saturday, right? So Lazarus Saturday. So we start Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is Holy Week. But we have Lazarus Saturday. So if you remember on the Friday, there's a Friday called the end of the fast, Chatem Som, right? That ends Friday. And then Holy Week starts on Sunday. So we have that middle Saturday, Lazarus Saturday. And we don't know what to do with it. So we called it Lazarus Saturday. No, that's not true. And it actually doesn't have a rite to it. It's actually annual tune. So we don't have either Lenten tune or Holy Week tune. It's just an annual tune. And the church actually pondered letting everyone break their fast for that day and then go to start fasting Holy Week, which would have been nice, but everybody we would have lost the momentum probably. So the church decided to fast through that particular day. And if you think about it, Lent really has nothing to do with Holy Week, right? So you have Holy Week and Easter, and then you have the 40 days Jesus fasted. And those are two separate events, right? We have them together now, but Jesus fasted 40 days at the beginning of his ministry, and we have Holy Week at the end of his ministry. What do the two have to do with each other? And so the church took the Lent and stuck it onto Holy Week and just made it into one long thing as a way to think about how to get us to. By the way, this has nothing to do with this talk, so we haven't even started the talk yet. That's just up there to confuse you at this point. So the whole idea is to start to think about how to prep for the resurrection, right? And so what the church did is it thought about what's the best way to prepare for this resurrection. And the best way to prepare for the resurrection of Christ and our resurrection is to start with our crucifixion, right? Because there's no resurrection without a crucifixion. So Christ has to be crucified so you can be resurrected. And so then the church said, you know what we're going to do is we're going to crucify ourselves for 40 days first, right? And that crucifixion process leads to a more fruitful resurrection. Okay? And so what the church wants us to do is to kind of take our minds and start to think about what comes next. And so that's the idea of Lent. Lent, the whole Lent is actually a preparation for the coming for the resurrection of Christ. Okay. So one of the things we sang today during the communion was, "Blessed are those who have mercy, who give to the poor, and fast and pray." And one of the things that's injected in there is not just fast and pray, but it's this give to the poor, blessed are those who have mercy. And so what comes to mind is the story of the Good Samaritan. So I thought today we could talk about the Good Samaritan through iconography. So I want to go through some icons of the Good Samaritan and sort of tell the story of the Good Samaritan. So this is the story of the Good Samaritan. Does everyone know the story of the Good Samaritan, or should I read it? Huh? Meg, do you know the story of the Good Samaritan? I just want to exif Magdi. Does anyone not know the story of the Good Samaritan? Okay, that's good. You're my lower bar. I just checked. Meg, do you know the story? He's like, yeah, I know it. All right. Okay, then we're good. All right, let's stop. Okay. All right, let's start in the middle. Do this and you'll live. And he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? So, well, let's just read it. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And then, what is written in the law, he replied. How do you read it? Jesus answered. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. Now, this really just, and you all know this, right? This is the summary of everything, right? Love God, love your neighbor. And it's really that simple, right? And the whole message of the gospel comes down to just that. And so he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? And in reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, and you guys know the Samaritans were all bad people at this time, right? So the Samaritans were like a group of Jews who kind of mixed with some pagan people, and in the process they mixed their religious worship, and so Samaritans were just the worst people ever, right? And so Jesus picked a Samaritan on purpose. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I'll reimburse you for the extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. And so what's beautiful here is he's really simplifying the commandments, right? And it just comes down to this very simple act, go and do likewise. Okay. So what do we learn from this story? We've all heard this story, including Megdi. Helping people in need is what a Christian is supposed to do. Going the extra mile is important, right? He not only took him to an inn, but he gave him 2 denarii, and then he said, take care of him, and when I come back, if there's any other expenses, I'll take care of it. It's easy to have false religion, so he picked a priest and a Levite on purpose. Right? You have the Levitical priesthood as well. The Levite was one of the tribes of Israel that was the priesthood tribe. And so you can easily fall into the trap of being very religious, but not very good. And even someone like a Samaritan can be honored, right? And Christ purposely picked out a Samaritan to say, look, even these people that you call bad can do the right thing and be great people. So there isn't a chosen people who are only the people who are going to heaven or only the people chosen by God, but now even these other people can participate. So these are kind of the answers what we've learned learning this story. But let's take a quick detour and sort of discuss some rules in what I'm going to call rules. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. This is just an example. Where is this from? Sermon on the Mount, right? Matthew chapter 5. Right, it's Matthew 5, 6, and 7. This part is called the Beatitudes. So there's 8 Beatitudes, and that's from chapter 5 in the very beginning. So when I read these things, I'm supposed to say to myself what? I'm supposed to be meek. I'm supposed to hunger and thirst for righteousness. I'm supposed to be merciful. I'm supposed to be pure in heart. Blessed. I'm supposed to be a peacemaker, right? Isn't that what this is saying? So let's take a look. Let's dive in a little deeper. Father, you are the one who is good. The world does not know you, but I know you. And these people know that you sent me. I showed them what you are like. And again, I will show them what you are like. And then they will have the same love that you have for me, and I will live in them. One of the reasons Christ came to earth was to show us who God was. Right? And this is what St. Athanasius talks about in his book on the Incarnation, is revealing, he's a revelation, right? The manifestation of God, right? Because, we just didn't have a very good image of God, right? We imagined God as this harsh guy who would hurt you if you didn't do the ritual properly, you didn't wash properly, you didn't tithe properly, you didn't do whatever. And then Christ comes along and says, let me show you who God is. If God could be one human being, how would this God talk, act, walk, dress, sleep, eat? How would he do all of these things? What would God do? And this is who we believe Christ is, the manifestation of who God is. So he says, I showed them, the disciples, what you are like, and again, I'll show them what you are like. So now let's go back and think about some of these rules. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, blessed are those who persecute, etc. And then there's lots of rules. Let love be without hypocrisy, abhor what is evil, cling to what is good, be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love and honor, giving preference to one another, not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. What am I supposed to do with this verse? Am I supposed to do all these things? Am I supposed to say, I must love without hypocrisy, must love without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil, abhor what is evil, must abhor what is evil, cling to what is good, must cling to what is good. And I just have to repeat that to myself over and over and then do these things? Is that how it works? Can I will myself to abhor what is evil? Can I will myself to be kindly affectionate to another person with brotherly love? Have you ever tried to brotherly love someone who's unlovable? Can you will yourself to do that? Not very easily. Okay, so what's the point of all these rules? And then that's the question. Maybe these aren't prescriptions for us to be like perfect robots. Maybe the Lord is telling us about who he is. Maybe the meek and the merciful and the persecuted, that's Christ. Let's read this again. Let love be without hypocrisy. Christ. Abhor what is evil. Christ. Cling to what is good. Christ. Be kindly affectionate to one another with. Maybe this is just him. And maybe when Christ talks about all of these things we're supposed to do, he isn't saying you're supposed to do these things. What's he saying? I'm like this. I'm your dad, right? This is who I am, and I came to show you who the Father was. And so maybe this isn't something I'm supposed to force myself to do. Maybe it's something I become once I become a part of him, right? Once he becomes a part of me, once, as we say in the John chapter 6, he abides in me and I in him. So now all of a sudden, I become like this guy because he's in me and I'm in him. And so the whole point sometimes of what Christ is doing is just to correct our understanding of who God is and compare our lives to his. Not so much to just imitate blindly or imitate mechanically or imitate robotically, but just as a measure, right? To say, am I on the right path or not? Right? Am I doing the right thing or not? Am I living the right way or not? Right? It's kind of like you put a thermometer in your mouth and it's supposed to say 98.6. If it doesn't say 98.6, that doesn't mean the problem is a fever, right? The problem is something else, right? The problem is a virus. The problem is an infection. The problem is there's a problem, and the thermometer is simply indicating there's a problem. So when I read these verses and I don't have brotherly love for my enemy and I don't have this kind of mercy and this kindness and I'm not a peacemaker, I have to ask myself, am I in a good relationship with my dad or not? Why aren't I like my dad? What's wrong in the relationship that's making me not do these things? So we can't go backwards. We can't say, I got to do these things, so that puts me in a relationship with God. No, the relationship with God starts first. Right, as St. John says, right, we love God because he loved us first. Oh, I think they're messing with the volume. Right? And then we continue, and we talked about this with Emma Brahm a little while ago, and Randy and Ashraf argued with me. I was hungry and you fed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison. So what's this passage telling us? We don't earn heaven. We don't earn heaven by doing things. right? In fact, today we were singing, Jesus Christ fasted for us 40 days and 40 nights. We don't fast for him. He fasted for us. And so this isn't about good people doing good things and therefore going to heaven and earning it, because you can't earn heaven, right? And especially if you think about it and you do these things and you say, well, then I saved myself. But once again, these are signs that I'm living with Christ. These are signs that my relationship with my dad is healthy. Love God, and then love your neighbor. In that order. I love God, and then the first outcome, the thermometer, the 98.6 is what? I love my neighbor. If I don't love my neighbor, there's something wrong with the first piece of it. Does that make sense? So one drives the other one. Okay, so now it gets weird. In this icon, this is the icon of the Good Samaritan. What do we notice that's different? The Good Samaritan is replaced with Christ. So Christ becomes the Good Samaritan. That's weird. So are we supposed to help others? I thought this story is about us helping others. Or is it Christ who helps others? The story about us, or is it about Christ? Or is it about Christ in us helping others? Right? So when I start Matthew 25ing and feeding the hungry and the poor and the naked and the prison, it's not me, is it? It isn't me. That's why I can take no credit. That's why I don't get conceited when I go and help somebody out, because that wasn't me. Right? My nature usually isn't like that, actually. Human nature is kind of selfish, kind of thoughtless. So when I see somebody performing this extreme act of kindness or sacrificial love, you have to say to yourself, that just isn't very natural. There's something from above that's coming. So when I see that Christ is doing all these things, and I see that I'm doing all of these things, and I see that it's Christ in me doing all of these things, and the closer my connection becomes to Christ, the easier these things just kind of pop out of me, right? And I remember maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, we were at a men's meeting, and Peter Youssef was, I still remember something Peter Youssef said, which is, I know Sherry, it's hard to believe. Peter was talking about the 9/11, the tragedy, and he was talking about how the firefighters were running towards the building, and how that was just not the nature. Do you remember you saying this? Was not the nature of a human being, right? You see a plane go into a building, you run away from that building, right? That's just sort of what we all are hardwired to do. And these firefighters were just running full speed into the building, right? Because that's the way they think. They move towards the danger. They move towards helping people. They can't run away from people, right? And he was talking about how this is what service is like, right? We see someone in need and we just can't go the other way. You just can't. You just don't know how to see someone and then say, I'm glad I'm okay. I'm glad my kids are okay. I'm glad my family's stable, right? If Christ is in you, then you're going to be like this icon of the Good Samaritan. Christ sees the person, and he can't help but stop and help them along. Okay, so here's another twist. Notice anything strange in this icon? Sorry, I'm eating. Huh? There's 4 Jesus. Okay. Huh? There's demons in the corner. Very good, Henny. I didn't even plant Henny. You just knew that. So it looks like, what did it say? I shouldn't eat and talk. What did it say in the story? Who was beating up the guy? Robbers. And yet this iconographer, it's not robbers. It's demons. The robbers aren't robbers. Okay? And so who are they beating? They're beating us. And so when I see someone beat, and I know I always say this often, when I see someone beat, someone broken, someone sinful, someone bad, someone wicked, someone evil, someone who's just jealous and resentful and tries to get you, and, the really bad people, not us, but the other bad people. And we always kind of judge those people, right? Like, I can't believe this person did this. I can't believe she said that. I can't believe he did this. And, right? We have to say what the monks say, right? What do the monks always say? Whenever we see our brother sinning a great sin, we say, I curse you, Satan, my brother is not at fault. So when I see my brother fallen and broken and addicted and problematic and angry and bitter, I don't think you're disgusting. I think to myself, man, those guys did a number on you, right? And when we see our kids and we see them messing up and we see our friends messing up and we see our siblings and our spouses messing up, one of the saints says, don't lunge at the throat. When you see Satan at the throat of your neighbor, don't blame your neighbor. Blame Satan, who's doing it. So it's a very important lesson that every time we see broken people, which is all of us, it isn't them that we see. The man was going from Jerusalem to Jericho, from heaven to the world. All right, I'll just leave that one. Okay, so how did Christ find us in this icon? If you zoom in, he was looking. He was searching for us. And this is what Christ does. He looks for us. And if Christ is in me, then what am I doing? I'm also searching. Right? I'm also searching for people. I'm looking for anyone who's fallen. I'm looking for anyone who's down. I'm looking for anyone who needs me. And I'm constantly thinking and looking for anyone who needs me. So then what did he do in this icon? He took him and he put him on his back. Of course, in the story, he put him on a donkey, but this is nicer. And then where did he take him? Oh, okay. All right, before we get there. You see that the Lord carries us, and similarly, again, this isn't the Lord doing it, it's me, carrying the burdens of others. Right, so this becomes the Christian duty, to carry the burden of others. Right? Carry others' crosses with them. Carry these burdens and not watch them and say, I'll pray for you. Right? Nothing wrong with praying for someone, but just standing there and letting them suffer and saying, I'll be back here praying, it's not enough. And so Christ not only did he just, point this guy in the right way, he said, let me carry you. Right? And sometimes you'll meet people who are just carrying other people in so many ways in their lives, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, and they'll even use those words, this person carried me through this difficult period in my life. And we all take turns, right? We all have difficult periods, then we switch, flip-flop, and then someone gets sick, or someone has this problem, or someone has this thing, and we all just kind of flip-flop between different difficult periods in our lives. Okay, same scene, different icon. See anything strange in this icon? Something new? Good. So where does Christ take us? Who knows? Who can remember the icon you just saw? Where do we heal? Where do we recover? He took him to a church, right? So the inn that we talked about, read about in the gospel, the fathers interpret that as the church, right? The place where there's oil and healing and ointment. And so this is where we're supposed to come. I just shared the password with you, amen. It's okay. It's not important. Don't worry about everybody else, as long as you get the password. We don't want to use your precious cellular data. Okay. So St. Augustine says, the robbers left you half dead on the road, but you have been found lying there by the passing and kindly Samaritan. Wine and oil have been poured on you. You have received the sacraments of the one only begotten Son. You've been brought to the inn, and you are being cured in the church. And of course, this is a point that I know we make often, but the church has to always be the place where you find these broken, hurt, beat up people. And so the church, if you've been beaten up by Satan, then this is the place for you. Right? This is where we should always find comfort, always find healing, always find community, not find judgment, find peace, find love, find restoration. And the worst thing we can think about is a scenario where, the person got beat up by the demons, and the innkeepers say, no, you're not well yet. Once you get better, then you can come to church, right? Once you deserve to come here, once you're good like us, then you can come into the church, right? That's a horrible thought that should scare us all. Okay, so many levels and lessons to this parable. The basic one, be good and help other people. The next one is it's not us, but Christ that helps other people. So why is that important? Because this is the realization of number 2 is the only thing that will keep you from pride. Right? If you run around thinking that you're doing this, right, then you're going to have pride, and then the second step will be what? As soon as I get prideful that I'm doing all this great stuff. Huh? Self-righteousness, which then will lead me to judge everybody who isn't good like me, obviously, right? So as soon as it's my righteousness, it's self-righteousness, it's not God's righteousness that's in me, then I immediately judge other people. Well, that's because they're not good. They don't try as hard as I do. I fast the whole thing. They don't. I come to church more than they do. I help other people. They don't, right? I, you. And next thing you know, it's all about you. It's Christ in us that helps other people. What is that one? How's that different from number 2? Yeah, right? And so now, even the goodness that comes out of me, even the words that come out of me, the thoughts that come out of me, the heart that comes out of me are His. So then there's very little that's me, right? And this is the story, the beauty of the story of Adam and Eve, right? What did God make him out of? Dust. What's dust? Dust is nothing, right? Dust is something that's all over the place. It's worthless. One fleck of dust is like the next fleck of dust. There's no dust that's better than any other dust. It's just an annoyance, and you just try to get rid of dust. That's dust, right? We spend all the time cleaning this church because of all the dust. Dust is nothing, right? And so even when I have something to give, what could I possibly give if I believe the story of Genesis, then I'm just dust. What am I giving? The other people are us. We are both the Good Samaritan and the man going from Jerusalem to Jericho. So we have to be that person that helped, and many, many times we are the person who needs to be helped. We're that broken man. We're the person who got jumped by the robbers, by the demons. And so it alternates. Again, there's this circle of community between us. Sometimes we're the people getting beat up and we're down, and sometimes we're the people in a position to offer Christ to someone else who's been beat up. And then it flips. And there'll be a time when you're the guy getting beat up, or you'll be the time when you can help other people. In fact, the best person to help someone else is the person who got beat up, because they get it. Right? In fact, this is probably why God allows us to get beat up so much. Right? The more we get beat up, the more broken we become, the more empathetic we become, the more loving we become. Right? The more we get other people's pain. And then the question is, do we really help others? And if so, how? It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Right? So the important lesson here is I don't really help anybody. right? In the end, it's really Christ who's living in me. Okay? And this helping is just an outcome of a life I have with God, right? And as I say that, I point to the altar, right? The Eucharistic life, the liturgical life has become sort of the fountain, the source, right? I drink from the fountain, right? It's basically the story of the Samaritan woman, isn't it? Isn't the story of the Samaritan woman the story of the Eucharist? She comes to the fountain, the well. She drinks from the living water, and then she becomes a source of living water, which is why as you leave the church, there's an icon of the Samaritan woman as you leave the church. Go and do as she did. Came, you took of the living water, and now go out and be living water for everyone you meet. Okay, I'll stop there. That was a Christmas thing. Anybody have any questions or comments? The children's are coming in as we speak. God bless them. Okay. Yes, sir. Henry isn't here to hand out the microphones. Peter, I'm at Hag. اشتغل.
This reminded me of something. Early this morning, I was waiting for my little one to get ready, so I was looking to see if the live stream was on. It wasn't ready, but there was a talk that you gave 4 years ago. So during COVID, it was about you were in your home office. It was about the God in the life of Jonah. And you said something so simple but so profound. I think you said St. Augustine said it. You said, love God and do whatever you want. It was such a simple thing. And I remember, like you just showed St. Augustine, he was someone who was far from the church. And so he's speaking, just like you just mentioned, from his own experience. Like, these are people we need to learn from. And that when we're broken, when we're far from the church, when we're dealt with differently, like, these are the people we should be listening to. And it's so simple. I mean, some of us have such an analytical mind, and like, as you started, okay, we have all the Beatitudes, all the rules, and okay, I have to do this, okay, then I have to do this and this. But why don't we just step back and stick to what's simple, and then it covers all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fond of saying Christianity is very simple. It's not complicated, it's just very hard. It's just very hard to do, but it's not complicated. The problem is when the people you want to love suck. Not us, the others. Very important, not people here, just saying. Then it's harder. Any other questions, comments? Magdi. Yalla Peter, اشتغل. Microphone is power. I use it against you. I wield it. You want him to turn it on for you? Come in.
Okay.
Magdi, can you please stand up, please? Thank you.
I have to stand up.
No, I'm kidding.
So I feel like we've discussed this a little bit, you and I, and the hard part about not taking credit for doing things and not giving God the credit is that I think a lot of times we're constantly thinking of all the bad things that we do, and it kind of balances it out, right? So it's very difficult for me to take all negative of everything I do and give all positive to God, and I think that's kind of the problem, right? It's not that I think we're naturally kind of prideful and egotistical and whatever, but that's the challenge, right? That's, as we work hard to not be like that, that's where it comes in. That's, I think, where maybe the demons or the devil comes in and says, well, you should take credit for this one, right? Because the other 23 hours you've been beating yourself up. So I don't know, kind of speak to that a little bit. I don't know if I have a question, but I feel like that's what I kind of do sometimes is that, oh, Sherry has an answer. Oh, here you go.
It's not her, it's me.
I don't have an answer, but Saint Therese of Lisieux, I love her and her approach to God, and she said something like, I'm paraphrasing and I wish I knew the exact quote, but when she would sin or mess up, she would basically say, God, what do you expect of me? Like, I'm just like a little child, basically. So instead of heaping, shame on herself, she's like, it's not, I wouldn't expect much more. And so I think that helps because it is, I think, the devil who wants us to feel bad about ourselves. God doesn't want us to just feel bad about ourselves. And so I've also said this many, many, many times. I wish I knew who said it also, but they say humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. So kind of like try to take yourself out of the equation and just put it all at God's feet. But
Perfect.
I'm sure Marchie has a better answer.
No. And I'll refer to my own training. So in management theory, there's something called attribution bias, which when people are talking, when you watch CEOs talk, they'll always say, when you read like a report that they'll write about when things are bad, well, that's because the economy was bad and then the industry was suffering and we had a setback here, blah, blah. When things are good, I successfully navigated through blah, 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 right? And so naturally, when people talk, we all do this, right? When things are bad, well, that's because this, that happened, right? When things are good, yeah, well, so I went out and I conquered, right? And so I think this is very natural. Like that's the natural state. Just talk to a kid, right? Kid hits a home run. I hit a home run. Kid struck out. Well, that's because the pitcher threw it in a way that blah, blah, blah. Like this is just who we are as humans, right? So this is what I'll call old Adam, right? So what we're suggesting is the exact opposite of that, right? Which means it's a battle, it's not our nature, right? In psychology, it is a known human bias to attribute good things to me and bad things to the world. It's what we do. So you're fighting against you to do that, right? So it's not something that snaps into place. It's something that takes a long time to work on to reverse old Adam and make it into new Adam.
Randy.
Oh boy.
In the form of a question, please.
Well, Ashraf's not here, so you have to channel Ashraf.
It kind of speaks to what was previously said, and kind of what I've taken from this very beautiful talk is that my personal credo, or what I live by, is that I want to approximate Christ in my life as closely as I possibly can. So I think that's what the icons were showing, that I want to be Christ. And then the good that I do is a consequence of that. And the bad that I do is a consequence of the lack thereof. So then there's not so much of the struggle that I'm good or I'm bad or woe is me, but it's how closely have I approximated Christ. And if I haven't approximated him closely enough, then I'll find that I'll err on the wrong side. I came across this story of St. John.
Before, because I'm going to forget, that fits exactly with what Sherry just said, which is instead of when I fall short, I don't go into a woe is me, right? I just go into what Sherry said, which is like, well, what'd you expect? I'm not you. I'm not perfect, right? And then it's very calm, right? There's no angst about I missed and I can't believe and I sinned and blah, blah, blah. But it's more of a, I'm not you, right? And I'll get closer one of these days. So anyway, I just wanted to tie that in together.
No, that's nice. And I was going to say, it reminds me of the story of St. John the Dwarf when he tied his hair to the ceiling with this great aesthetic practice that he wouldn't fall asleep at night. And then we read it and it always confounded me. Like, is this something I'm supposed to do? Is something I'll ever do? This is craziness. But I think it's not. I think it stems from the great love that he had. So the ascetic practice was very easy for him because he was enthralled in such great love. Who knows what he saw that he didn't want to sleep? So sometimes we focus on the symptom or the ascetic practice or the negative, but really we just have to ask myself, do I love as much as I'm supposed to? Because maybe those things won't seem so hard.
Yeah, and that particular story is very salient to me because I think it was Mbap Shoy, but like when I heard that story in Sunday school, I heard, look how Mbap Shoy used to stay up all night praying. How long do you pray? You know, see how much better he is than you. You used to pray for 10 minutes and you want to fall asleep, and it was this shameful blah blah blah. And in fact, one of the kids in the class turned to the Sunday school teacher and said, "Do you pray all night? Like just like let's flip it on the teacher, right?" And he of course kicked him out of the class. But again, it's, you know, like the way you think about it is this, it's this love thing, right? It's like, you know, seeing a friend you haven't seen in years, right? And then you just want to stay up all night talking, you know, and you see like teenagers do that. Like they're falling asleep, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I was at a retreat once. I went into the cafeteria in the morning at 6 a.m. because I'm just up to get coffee. And there's a bunch of kids sitting there. And one of them had her head down on the table asleep. And I'm like, have you guys been up all night? And they stayed up all night talking, right? So, you know, they didn't have Red Bull back then, right? So this is how Mbap Shoy did it. He tied, you know, but it's like, it's driven by, I don't want to end this conversation, you know, versus I have to do it, which just isn't going to work. Good. Any other questions, comments? All right. Glory be to God forever. Amen. Make us worthy to say with all thanksgiving, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses. We forgive those who trespass. Lead us not into temptation.
Hello.
I'll take some.